Nanesh Dile and welcome to Tibet This Week. This is Sakina Bhatt with another edition of Weekly News on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama meets with the members of Club 1880. His Holiness the Dalai Lama condoles victims of Christchurch attack. Tibetan Parliament approves Tobgel Siring Dzongkha as colour of 15th Kasha. Jigchen Wangchen wins Geneva Summit's prestigious Courage Award. Tibetans urge UN member states to call China to end 60 years of human rights violations in Tibet. Thank you, Russia concludes in Moscow. A group of 85 people from Singapore who are the members of Club 1880 came to visit His Holiness the Dalai Lama on Wednesday this week. His Holiness said that if people like them belonging to the 21st century made an effort to change things through education, after one generation or so, they might see a more peaceful and more compassionate world.
We are 85 souls, 85 hearts that have come from Singapore. We are representative of multiple religions, cultures, backgrounds, professions. We are as young as 9, as old as, I'm not going to reveal, 65-ish, somewhere around there. But we are all united in the hope that we can all make the world a better place.
You see people from different country, different culture, different language, but come here as a human being and thinking more deeper level of our value. That's hopeful sign, hopeful sign. And according to my own experience, some of these thoughts, you see more and more people showing interest and implement and further think. That's the purpose of my life. My daily prayer, my physical, my speech, my mind, dedicated well-being of others.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama offered his heartfelt prayers and condolences to the people of New Zealand and families of victims of the terrorist attack on 2 Christchurch mosques, which left scores of people dead and injured. In a letter addressed to Prime Minister of New Zealand, Honourable Jacinda Ardern, His Holiness admired the courage, wisdom and leadership shown by her. His Holiness said, "I applaud the way you and the people of New Zealand have reached out with compassion and support to members of the Muslim community among you. It is encouraging too that across the world, people of all faiths are visiting mosques in solidarity with Muslims after the Christchurch shootings." The Christchurch mosque shootings were 2 consecutive terrorist mass shootings at Muslim mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand during Friday prayer on 15th March 2019. The attacks killed 50 people and injured 50 more. Tobgel Siring Dzongkha, Secretary of the Kasha Secretariat of Central Tibetan Administration, has been elected as a colour of the 15th Kasha following nomination by the President, Dr. Lobsang Sangay, at the 7th session of Tibetan Parliament on Friday last week. He was approved as the colour by the Tibetan Parliament in exile following a majority vote with 21 for, 18 against, 2 blank votes and 1 null vote. Tibetan filmmaker Jigchen Wangchen has been awarded the 2019 Courage Award by Geneva Summit on Tuesday this week. A coalition of 25 global human rights organizations made the decision to give the prestigious International Human Rights Award to Wangchen for inspiring the world with his extraordinary courage in the defense of freedom, democracy and universal human rights. Expressing his gratitude, Wangchen appealed for the international community's support for the Tibetan struggle.
International community support keep my faith alive. Without the international community support that I received, I would have been long dead. I thought I already knew how important basic freedoms and rights are for a human being, but I realized the true meaning of freedom and get sense of how freedom is more important than one's life after I was released from the prison. Life for a Tibetan political prisoner after coming out of prison is no different from being in prison. I was under constant surveillance. I could not meet my friends and relatives. because it would put them in trouble. It is difficult to find jobs for political prisoners.
Shot just before the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Wangchen's documentary Leaving Fear Behind gave the world a rare glimpse of Tibetans living under the brutal repression of the Chinese Communist Party. Tibetan community in Switzerland and Liechtenstein called upon China to end human rights violations in Tibet in a demonstration staged in front of the UN building on Friday last week. Protesters urged UN member states to call China to end its 60 years of systematic human rights violations in Tibet. A two-page appeal letter addressed to Ms. Michelle Bachelet, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, was also handed over to the Commissioner's office. The appeal letter seeks to resolve the Tibet issue through the resumption of dialogue with the envoy of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Chinese government. Tibetan national flag was hoisted at Eamons Town Hall commemorating the 60th Tibetan National Uprising Day on Saturday last week. The program started with mayors of Eamons and Versailles showing their support for the Tibetan cause. Representative Tashi Pinzok thanked the mayors for their support and requested them to continue hoisting the Tibetan flag. The Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs, U.S. Department of State, has submitted its report to the U.S. Congress under the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act regarding the level of access Chinese authorities granted to U.S. diplomats and officials, journalists and tourists to the Tibet Autonomous Region and Tibetan areas in China in 2018. The report denounces the level of access to Tibet Autonomous Region is heavily restricted and regularly denied. It also noted a disturbing development of increase in the restrictions and prohibitions in the level of access to Tibet in 2018 compared to 2017. The report details various instances where the diplomats, tourists and journalists traveling within Tibet Autonomous Region and the Tibetan areas were subjected to interrogations, detentions, threats, physical blocking, restrictions, prohibitions, expulsions and conspicuous monitoring and unlawful surveillance to create an atmosphere of intimidation.
The United States State Department has brought out a report on the Reciprocal Act passed by the United States recently that vindicates the Tibetan people's request to the United States government and parliament that Tibetans living in the United States or other parts of the world are not allowed to visit their homeland. They also, the diplomats and media people are not allowed to visit Tibet. So the report clearly shows that Chinese government has turned Tibet into an isolated area where international community are not allowed to visit. So this report clearly shows that the request that we have been making to the various governments that China is not giving access to Tibet like the United States are giving to the Chinese officials.
Thank You Russia concluded in Moscow with the presentation of mementos to the Tibet support groups and Tibetan traditional performances on Friday last week. On behalf of Central Tibetan Administration and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Tibet Culture and Information Center of Office of Tibet in Moscow extended their appreciation to all the friends and supporters for the years of solidarity and support for Tibet. This is the end of this week's bulletin of Tibet This Week. See you next time and have a great weekend.